Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here this afternoon. My name is Tracy George. I'm the events coordinator here at Holistic Plan, and I am pleased to introduce Megan Dowd, our Director of Product Insurance here at Holistic Plan. She has 4 specific designations, each related to specialized knowledge in different areas of insurance and wealth management. What we're talking about here today is really important, especially as it relates to the holiday season, to protect your clients from any risk if they're hosting or gift giving. Before we dive in, yes, this webinar will be recorded. Yes, the slides will be sent out afterwards. And please direct any questions into the Q&A, and we will do our best to answer them as we go. If you've been here before, you all know that Megan loves questions, as she has a deep expertise in this area. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Today, again, we're going to talk about protecting your clients during the holiday season. There's a lot that goes on. A little bit about me. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I was an insurance broker before joining the Holistic Plan team full time, just to help educate everyone. I think insurance is such an important topic, especially for planners, just making sure that everything you guys are working so hard for is properly protected, especially your clients' planning. I do have a bunch of designations, so I've spent the last 15 years really learning the ins and outs of the insurance industry. And then when I'm not learning about insurance or talking about it, I love to spend time with my family. I have 2 young children. We also enjoy riding horses and reading. So today we're going to discuss hosting liability, so considerations for your clients while they host, some travel protections, gifting and generational protections, kids' toys. While it's always fun to gift them, there's some things that need to be considered before we do so. And then something new I'm going to try is the claim game, just to kind of help with some interaction and just see kind of what we're all learning throughout the webinar. And so let's help your clients be joyful and not liable. When it comes to hosting, there's a few kind of categories that we're going to discuss. One is damage to the home. So again, hosting can be one of the most fun times during the holiday season, but it is shown according to the National Fire Protection Association, the fire chances that there's about 160 Christmas tree fires a year. Let's just put it that way. It's around $10 million in damage. So it's definitely something that is on the rise over the next, 20 to 30 days, and making sure that, should damage be caused by those Christmas trees, maybe cooking, and or holiday decorations, that it is all covered. We also can't forget about personal property. This is where different types of homeowners forms, which we'll discuss, become important. But again, sometimes at these events, there's drinking. So whether that's the red wine that gets spilt on that oriental rug, or maybe worse, drinking and driving, which we'll talk through next, there's a lot of considerations when hosting. The other thing that I found interesting is the increase of claims that relate to plumbing during the holiday. So again, that can be due to water backing up. That can be due to, maybe putting too much down the disposal that shouldn't be going down, and or just old plumbing that again has been holding on by a thread, and due to too many people flushing the toilets all in one day, the plumbing has now burst. And again, realizing your clients don't have the right coverage due to that can be a huge issue. Also, animals. Animals are something that, where they're going to be staying during the party, if they're kid friendly, those types of considerations are important, especially from a liability standpoint, in making sure that we're trying to mitigate as much as possible. Drinking and driving is another, again, topic that comes up during the holiday seasons. And if guests have too much to drink at your house, there is the possibility that your client could be held legally responsible after a car accident. So there's different ways to help prevent this, but do know there is some liability when your clients and or yourselves are hosting guests and serving liquor. We also want to make sure about those underage drinkers. So again, there's a lot of kids maybe home from college, just doing holiday parties with friends or just sleepovers. Understanding what children have in the home and if there's any limitations within the auto or home policies, liability is important. And then lastly is hosting a work and or personal party. This is really going to be for your business owner clients. Sometimes we see where they like to open up their personal home to their employees to host a lovely dinner, maybe just gathering. And while this is great, there is a gray area on if the commercial policy were to cover it, if personal insurance covers it, can there be liquor served, and a whole other host of questions that arise. So just make sure if you are working with that business owner and you hear they're hosting the holiday party at your home, that you quickly get them in touch with their risk advisor to understand the true implications of hosting that event. But there are a few things you can do to help guide your clients through those situations. So, one is property and making sure they have the right replacement cost. With 160 fires occurring on Christmas Day, this is not the time where we want your client to have been with the same insurance company for the last 15 years. Maybe they've done a bunch of kitchen remodeling in the last 10 years, and now their home burns to the ground, and they're only going to get pennies on the dollar to not rebuild that home. The replacement cost estimator is something our system can help you guys calculate. So again, just a good check-in point. Then also making sure they have replacement costs for their contents. So again, it may not be a total loss fire, but maybe there is a bunch of smoke damage. Maybe they have those higher end rugs, and we want to make sure that there's proper coverage for those items. Liability. So liability is not just for homeowners, folks. If you host and you own a condo, maybe your clients are renters, but they like to have a friendsgiving or, friend's Christmas, they should also have the right liability in case someone gets injured, or maybe they again catch the unit on fire that damages their unit and their neighbor's unit, another neighbor's unit, and they're found negligent in starting that fire. That renter's liability is what can help pay out for those damages. The medical payments are going to be for those smaller injuries that arise on premise. Maybe these guests just need to go to urgent care, get a few stitches. This is a no fault coverage. So, again, great to have and make sure the right limits are in place, especially when hosting. And then umbrella. So this would be for those worst case scenarios where maybe someone gets into an auto accident after leaving the home and drinking and driving. Or again, maybe you guys are celebrating New Year's Eve, lighting off fireworks, and unfortunately, a firework lands on a neighbor's home, causing a fire. There's a lot of instances over the holidays where liability comes into play. An umbrella can keep that peace of mind that if it does occur, there's additional protection outside the home and umbrella or home and auto policies. We also like to talk about risk mitigation. So this is how can your clients transfer some of the responsibility of hosting to other people? One of those can be hiring professionals, whether that's a chef to help cook if we're worried about food poisoning or allergies that guests may experience. Another big one is a bartender. Bartenders not only help serve the liquor, but a lot of them can be trained in recognizing when someone has been overserved and help you carefully go about that situation, whether it's hiring an Uber driver, having the conversation with that patron that maybe they need to have a few glasses of water. Bartenders can be great friends. The key here is, though, don't just hire your friend to serve. Make sure they are a legitimate bartending service. There are a lot of them out there, and that they do carry their own insurance for things like liquor liability. And then last is a nanny service for those families that maybe have a group of friends with a lot of young children. There can be some negligence sometimes arise when you're hosting, and again, maybe the pool back door was left open and when the kids got to the pool, having a nanny on site for hosting can just help make sure that there's always eyes on the children and help mitigate any of those instances from arising. And then lastly, if especially for those business owners of yours that have special events and they do want to host at their home, their wife is going to be the one pouring the liquor into the glasses. You're going to be serving the food. The special events policy is a great way not only to provide that property damage in case something happens at the venue, it does also cover liability, and there can also be coverage with vendors. So maybe you have some entertainment coming in and they cancel. Special events policies are very affordable and a great way to protect that special day. Next is holiday travel. So when we talk about holiday travel, there's just some lovely considerations around a few different topics. So one is valuables. When traveling, make sure you keep your jewelry with you or in a hotel vault. The key to this is the vault of the hotel, not in the room safe. Room safes are actually easily accessible. A lot of times the cleaning crews, maintenance individuals have access to those rooms and can reset the codes if necessary. So making sure the hotel vault is being used. Don't pack jewelry in the luggage. Obviously, that seems like common sense, but you would be surprised how many clients, when traveling, decide just to put the valuables in between some clothing. Excuse me. Make sure that that is on them at all times. Also consider travel jewelry. Again, while it's fun to show off our nicer items, sometimes having or what others may know as like costume jewelry is a better way to travel and again still feel pretty without having the risk of losing a set of diamond earrings or a bracelet in the course of travel, especially if the hotel or place that the clients are staying does not have a secure vault or place to store the items. Next is the animals. So animals, again, come with a lot of liability, and where the animals stay while the travel is occurring can make a difference. So maybe the client has someone coming to their home, and so now they're going to have another individual walking the dog. What happens if that dog were to bite someone? They're going to need liability there. Maybe they're taking the dog to a facility or the animal to a facility, such as a kennel would for the dog or animal to stay over the holidays, understanding if the dog gets sick or if the animal, again, injures a staff worker, what happens. And then there's also these third party programs like a rover that they sometimes, again, have some coverage, but not enough. So just understanding what the client is doing with their animals and that the people who are taking care of them have the coverage and or that their homeowner's liability does extend. Another situation is maybe your clients are the ones that animal sit for friends and family over the holidays. So people will drop their animals off at your client's home, understanding if your clients have any additional liability by bringing those animals into the home, and or if the owner of those pets does retain the liability is another consideration. And to be all honest, it does vary by carrier, so it's not a straightforward answer. Another consideration with traveling is social media. While it's really fun to share our travel plans and we're usually very excited, according to the National Crime Survey, there's a 20% increase in robberies in the month of December. And a lot of that can be traced back to social media and people just notifying these individuals with bad intent that they're going to be out of the home, that there's not going to be anyone there, that again, they may have posted other times when they bought a new luxury handbag or they, got their upgraded engagement ring for a wedding band, whatever it may be. Criminals these days are smart and they do tend to follow clients' social media patterns. And so notifying of travel prior to, especially during the holiday season, can be extra dangerous. And then we have your ultra high net worth clients. Sometimes when they start to share on social media, they not only have to worry about robberies, but they have situations like ransoms and kidnappings that could occur. So again, just making sure that clients are being aware of their uh, internet and what they're posting and what they're sharing, not only your clients, but their children and potentially generations below them, is again, social education when it comes to media is important. International travel. So this is going to be important when it comes to liability and making sure that clients have worldwide liability coverage. This can be necessary for when they're renting Airbnbs, if they maybe damage the Airbnb, if there's damage to a hotel room, maybe they injure someone while they're participating in activities such as riding a bike, and or maybe they bring their animals along with them for travel. There's a lot of different ways that clients can experience liability issues outside of the US, and it's very common for homeowners, renters, to have limitations and only provide coverage within the US and its territory. So, again, for those clients of yours that travel internationally during the holidays, make sure their home and umbrella policies include worldwide liability. Additionally, we have some activities that can increase their exposure. So whether that's, skiing and again, them injuring someone else on the slopes, maybe they're snowmobiling and they sign a waiver that states they're responsible for damage and injuries while using that vehicle. What happens if they do have a total loss while driving the snowmobile and it's a $30,000, $40,000 vehicle that they're now responsible for replacing, or worse, someone has serious injuries? Understanding and making your clients just aware and that they read the fine print in those waivers is important to understand if they're exposing themselves or something that, again, is covered by another individual. And then lastly, rental cars. There's a lot that goes into rental cars. So, first thing is, again, just that worldwide coverage. So, if your clients are traveling outside the US and renting vehicles, not all auto policies extend coverage outside the US. So, making sure that their auto also provides coverage. Adult children, there's limitations within the auto policy if someone is just a listed driver and not a household member. So, there are definitions within insurance, and there is a difference between a listed driver and a household member and what coverages can be extended. One of those typically is liability to rental vehicles. So, again, for those clients of yours that have children that are slowly moving out of household and maybe renting a car while they're back in town for the holidays, but have their own address, that again, they live out of household, please make sure that they purchase the rental car liability to help avoid any gaps in coverage. And then there's just coverage limitations when it comes to renting cars. So this isn't specific to the holidays, but we do see an uptick in specifically the loss of use that your clients may be charged. So let's say the client is traveling, they get in an auto accident on the 26th, and that vehicle was intended to be rented out to somebody else on the 27th. Well, now it cannot be rented out because your client damaged the car. The rental car company is going to experience what they call a loss of use. So they now are losing money because they can't rent out the vehicle that your client damaged. Your client could be responsible for those quote unquote loss of use fees. So this is something that is not covered when liability is extended from their auto policy. It can be covered through the rental car coverage. So that's sometimes why buying rental car insurance during the holidays can be nice because it covers that loss of use. Again, that could become out of pocket expense for your clients. The other thing it covers is diminishing value. So maybe your clients again are in that car accident and the rental car company is actually going to sell the car and the next day, and now there's an accident and they say, well, hey, the car's value is now $1,000, $2,000 less. They again can charge your client back for that, and that's something that's not going to be covered in most auto policies when just extending liability. So two big gaps that we find a lot of times apply during the holiday season. They can be mitigated by typically purchasing the rental coverage through the rental company. There are a few, I think like 4 or 5 insurance companies that do provide those gaps in coverage, but very few. And then lastly, your deductible applies when there's a loss to a rental car. So again, if you carry a $500,000 deductible and you do damage to the rental car and it's under that, you may still be out of pocket up to your deductible for that damage. So, what's some coverage considerations while your clients travel? One is medical. So, like I described, maybe they're snowmobiling or skiing and they injure themselves. They can buy medical coverage for like medical evacuation, death and dismemberment. It's usually very affordable on a trip basis. And something, again, depending on their activities, should be considered. I'm not a huge fan of trip cancellations, but I do know a lot of clients can spend a lot of money to go on some of these trips. So just advising your clients, depending on how much they're investing, to potentially consider that trip cancellation policy, especially over holidays, over the seasons that people tend to get sick and may not be able to travel. That could be a good idea, again, just to protect that investment they're making. Personal liability. So we've talked about this a lot, but just making sure they are going outside the US, or even if they're staying within the US, but maybe they're renting an Airbnb, renting a car, they understand where their personal insurance starts and stops. And that umbrella coverage can help provide additional peace of mind. If, again, maybe for auto, for example, they're driving 12 hours to go from one state to another, and they're in a really bad auto accident, multiple cars are involved, but they're found at fault, that umbrella policy is going to become really important when multiple people are injured, multiple vehicles. So again, with travel being increased, even in vehicles over the holiday season, having all 3 of their policies aligned can again give them that peace of mind to travel in confidence. Also, when it comes to traveling, there's some things to consider with newly acquired items, whether that's your jewelry and making sure there's coverage in place when it's acquired. A lot of people get engaged over the holiday season, so maybe they're traveling with that jewelry. Designer items. So again, maybe you invested in some nicer shoes, handbags. There could potentially be limitations and or how you travel with them is important. So having the designer bags again on you, even if you're bringing multiple, not putting them in luggage to then go through just the normal baggage claim, as we do tend to see theft rise during the holiday season, and then high-end electronics, and just again understanding what coverages need to be added for protection. Loss mitigation, we've talked about this a little bit, but again, while it's fun to show off all of our jewelry and other items during the holidays, really only traveling with the necessary items. Maybe plan out your outfits ahead of time or have your clients plan out their outfits ahead of time so they're not just bringing jewelry to travel with it. And then cyber hygiene. We haven't talked about this one a lot, but when clients are traveling, make sure they're not connecting just to any random Wi-Fi connection at the airport or in the cars. They're not just connecting to the Bluetooth. We've done a whole nother webinar on cyber. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend watching it, especially again, just knowing that clients will probably be connecting to the hotel Wi-Fis, or maybe friends and family Wi-Fis, and what exposures that could bring to them, as it does allow hackers into their world potentially. And if they do, especially ultra high net worth clients, if they like to use their phones to do banking and other situations, connecting to those unknown Wi-Fi connections can actually make them extremely vulnerable. So before I get into gifting, are there any big questions that I could answer, Tracy?
Right now I don't see any popped up just yet, but we can continue and circle back for sure.
Fabulous.
Okay.
So next is gifting. Obviously during the holidays, everybody loves to get or give gifts and honestly get gifts, but there's some considerations that should occur. So when shopping, go undercover. One retailer reports that they have undercover shopping bags that are completely plain with no jewelry, store logos, versus having, again, that high-end logo on the bag, just kind of calling to everyone in the mall that you've just spent a lot of money. Maybe they follow you to your car or worse, back to the home. So being a smart shopper is the first place to start. Also consider like using credit cards when purchasing gifts. We see the credit card systems and or just shopping centers have an increase in cyber hacks during the holiday season. And so if you use your credit card, it's the credit card company's money. So while it's unfortunate to kind of deal with the limitation funds when using your personal bank account, it can actually take time to recover those funds if they are able to get in and potentially drain everything in there. So just advising clients that while you may not be huge fans of credit cards, there is some level of protection if a shopping center has a hack in their services. Also, review the items before you purchase them. Just make sure they're the quality, there's no damage, because again, usually once you purchase and then you go to gift those items, it's hard to return them and or have additional conversations. We do see where there's gemstone swapping occurring here and there, especially for, again, those jewelry items, engagement rings, watches, and whatnot. Next is keep the items after you purchase them in a secure place. So whether that's, within the home in a security safe, or maybe you're giving it to a friend to hold because it is an engagement ring and you don't want your significant other to see it, make sure that they are storing it in a safe place and they're not just putting it on the top shelf of their closet. And we also want to make sure if we are shipping the gifts, maybe we're going to just celebrate the holidays at a family member's home out of state, that we understand what coverages are provided within the homeowners and or that shipping company. So you can buy additional coverages through the shipping company, and or homeowners policies do provide some coverage for personal property. There can be limitations around 10%, but the deductible applies. So if your clients have $2,500 or $5,000 deductibles, that may be way more than the gifts they're shipping. So they just need to understand that they're self-insuring them. So again, not a lot, but just some gaps that we tend to see that are often overlooked in the holiday spirit. And then lastly, preparing the gift to be given. So making sure that they provide the receipts while they don't need to provide them at the time of gifting. If it is a high value item, whether that's jewelry, maybe it's a collectible bottle of wine, whiskey, art, stamps, that the appropriate documentation is provided for them to get coverage, that they have the appropriate safety gear. So maybe someone gifts a bike to a child. Make sure you also give a helmet with that bike, just to make sure that we're avoiding injuries at all costs and potential liabilities. So coverage considerations with gifting. Liability. So when it comes to pets, there can be a decent amount of liability changes, whether that's limitations in the homeowner, such as the breed of the animal, and or maybe it's considered an exotic pet. We can also see within the toys the liability change for like motorized vehicles, where a lot of homeowners exclude coverage for motorized vehicles, especially like the electric bikes. We've seen those become a bigger issue within the space. Also, when it comes to pets, consider pet insurance. While I'm not an expert in pet insurance, there can be a lot of benefits depending on the type of the animal, the breed, that can just help better manage those unexpected medical bills that arise due to owning animals. When it comes to valuables, again, making sure for newly acquired items that they have the right policies in place, whether that's purchasing coverage and or just checking to see if the value falls within the personal property limit. Note most homeowners policies do have a limitation of anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 for jewelry. So again, even those engagement rings, nicer watches, they may need to be added to a valuable articles policy in order to get proper coverage. And then we also have clients that upgrade their jewelry during this time. So maybe they go from a 1 carat to a 3 carat, making sure they adjust their coverages as well is important, as well. Some companies have a little bit of inflation built into it. Those type of upgrades can really change the cost and replacement cost specifically, in making sure the coverages are in place to repair or replace the ring at time of damage is important. Another thing, or an insider note, I would say is most homeowners policies, you can add an endorsement for valuables. You can do like standalone policies for valuables, but there is a company called Jewelers Mutual. They do typically jewelry, but one nice thing with them is they don't report losses to a clue. So for your clients that have a lot of jewelry, large schedules, and they do like to wear it, but maybe they can be a little forgetful, they misplace it, they have children in the home, Jewelers Mutual could be a great place for them to insure their items and not feel scared to file claims if and when necessary, because it doesn't go again on that clue for the homeowners, where if the valuable articles policy is tied to a home company or within the homeowner's policy itself, it does reflect within the clear report and can sometimes have effects on pricing and eligibility depending on how the loss occurred. And we can't forget about those high-end bags and shoes as well. Those do fall into the valuables category. So clients again may get a really nice handbag. They can go anywhere from a couple thousand to 50, $60,000. And that definitely is not going to be covered in just your typical personal property limit. So you all know your clients very well. You may even know and help them decide what gifts they're going to be giving. So helping them also consider what limitations may be within their homeowners can help them give that gift with the peace of mind that it's protected should a loss occur. And then storage. So this really can be, again, for those designer products, but also spirits and wines, and making sure that while you're traveling with them, you do have them stored properly. A lot of companies don't cover breakage for those glass items. It's an additional endorsement that needs to be added. So again, just depending on what and how you're using them, different needs may arise. Oh, and temperature controlled. I think that's another big thing when it comes to typically wine, that you're making sure it's stored correctly. Generational gifting. So when it comes to generational gifting, there's a lot of emotions that come into this, as you all are aware. So sometimes how the current generation feels about that asset and the next generation feels about that asset could vary. So that's where, again, you all can be huge assets to help them decide, do we want to transfer these risks to insurance to replace them, and or are these more sentimental type items that are being transferred that if we lost them, we wouldn't really need insurance to replace them. But when we talk about generational gifting, I broke it up into 4 categories. One is valuable. So this is going to be, jewelry, watches, art, and understanding who they're giving them to. Again, that younger generation may have a different perspective of the crystal that grandma is passing down, and or maybe it's that ring that's been in the family forever and it's going from one generation to the next. Those valuables all have different sentimental and or true dollar amounts to them, and that's where this asset comes into place. And is gifting the valuables and or true cash, bonds, coins, does that change these individuals financial situation at all? If yes, let's make sure that we're getting the proper coverage in place, potentially talking with an attorney to make sure the proper structuring's there. So on Christmas or Hanukkah, when they get these gifts and they now have a change in their net worth, they go to drive home, they get in a big car accident. There's not this question of, are those assets now vulnerable to collections? And then there's property. We do see it during the holidays where people gift homes. Sometimes maybe it's land, vehicles, or again, those antiques. When it comes to home, land, and vehicles specifically, the names on the deed matter. And insurance follows the deed. So if they update the home deed or the vehicle deed before gifting, it's important that there's insurance in place in the receiver's name before that gift is given. An example would be a vehicle. Maybe grandma decides to gift it to her 16-year-old grandchild, and she has removed herself from the title and potentially even cancel their current insurance because Johnny's going to drive it as of Christmas. Johnny better have insurance. Otherwise, there could be no coverage in place for that vehicle because grandma's already canceled hers. And if Johnny is the owner of the vehicle based on the title on that deed, he now has that responsibility to carry insurance. So again, there's just a few things that sometimes people put the cart before the horse and making sure that all the ducks are aligned so those gifts can be given properly and insured is key. And then lastly, our donations. So again, while it's really nice for those older generations to make donations, it should be done discreetly. They shouldn't, obviously, you all probably know this, but making sure that we're not pointing out that someone has, again, maybe comes from a family of net worth, because in that example where, maybe grandma gifts the car to Johnny for Christmas, but she keeps the car in her name, but she also makes a large donation to a charitable um, or charitable group in the Johnny's name as well. There could then be a trail of like, hey, well, Johnny got in a car accident. Now it's actually in grandma's name. Oh, and look, grandma actually has some money because we can see based on this donation. Attorneys follow the paper trail. So again, just making sure that we're doing things in the best interest of clients discreetly can help them really enjoy the passing off of their assets. And then coverage consideration. So when it comes to valuables specifically, we want to make sure that the appraisals are up to date. If we're giving items that grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad have had for a while, the appraisals may be outdated. And so we want to make sure we know the value before we transfer it. This can also be important for taxes. I'm not a tax expert, but again, we want to make sure if the gift, grandma thinks it's worth $2,000, but it's truly worth $12,000, that we know that before we pass it off. When it comes to art, maybe help besides just giving the gift of art, maybe have a group come and help the clients hang that art. There can be a lot of different considerations when displaying it, such as where you hang it. It might look great over the fireplace, but that actually can cause a lot of deterioration with art. Maybe you want to set it in front of this lovely window because the natural light just really shows the color. That again can deteriorate the painting. So helping not only give the gift, but how to properly maintain that gift and how to display it can be a great way for others to enjoy. Also, make sure you give it to them in a secure location. So whether that's, at a restaurant, whether you're at a family member's home, understand where you're giving it and what activities they have after. We'll talk through in a few slides, potentially if people are going from home to home during the holidays, leaving gifts in the car, that can be dangerous, especially for those high value items, those watches, maybe it is a few pieces of jewelry, and giving them maybe not everything at once, but one piece, and then scheduling a time after the holidays for them to pick it up and safely bring it to their location. So, few different things to consider just in where and how to give that gift. And then we again need to update the coverages. So for the gifter, do not remove the coverage from your policy until you've actually given the gift. But once you have, make sure to remove it. When I was on the insurance side, it would surprise me at renewal time. I would be going through this with clients and they would say, oh yeah, no, I got rid of that last year. I don't have that piece anymore. So just helping clients not overpay for their policies because they no longer have those needs or items is something to consider. And then for the receiver, again, making sure they add the right coverage to their policy. So whether that's just increasing the coverage on their current policies or adding a new policy if it is a new art item or jewelry item, and then where they're going to store it. So again, sometimes with art, it may not be hung right away. So if they're going to store it, maybe they have a storage unit. The climate control issue can come into play. So want to make sure that if it's art, wine, whatever, that it's stored properly. Again, that deterioration. So a lot of different angles to look at when receiving and again, how you're going to bring it into your life. And then when everything is considered properly, the joy of gifting can really just allow generations to pass on what they've worked hard for, what means a lot to them, and know that it is being properly protected through that transition. But these are just a few ways that we see generational wealth transfer over the holidays. You all probably have your own stories to tell here, but this is something that is important to consider, and just knowing that there's a lot of moving pieces in generational gifting. And when it comes to valuables specifically, this kind of just ties in a lot of the slides we've talked about above. So, one, just that worldwide coverage, especially for those travelers, deductibles. So, when you have a valuable articles policy, there's typically no deductible that applies. So, for clients, maybe they have a few jewelry items. Maybe they got a tennis bracelet, earrings, a new handbag, and that all can either be covered, sometimes in personal property, but the deductible applies. So they may have a $5,000 home deductible, which really makes it not appropriate to file a claim because the earrings, the tennis bracelet, and the purse were $3,500. Whereas if they were on a scheduled policy, no deductible would apply, and then your client may want to file that claim because they'd get the full $3,500. Inflation protection, this is again just going to help. We see gold, silver, all of that change, quite frequently. So as that happens, there can be some inflation protection built into valuables coverage that's not built in to typical homeowners' personal property. Newly acquired items. So again, if clients already have some jewelry, or maybe they have art and they acquire new stuff over the holidays, they can have some coverage automatically included in a valuable articles policy. Some typically it's about up to 25% for 90 days. Appraisals and receipts, again, documentation is key in insurance, not just to get coverage, but in order for coverage to respond, you will have to have proof of ownership. So making sure that when someone gives you those appraisals or receipts, we're not just discarding them, that we're putting them in a safe space because they will be requested if there is ever a loss. And then last, this isn't available in all valuables coverage, but something to consider for, again, a lot of your higher end clients and or potentially clients that have that generational gifting of matching and diminished value. So a good example here would be like a set of earrings. A lot of times, diamonds specifically, they have cuts and clarity, and the set may come from the same diamond and they've just been broken into two. And if you lose one, and you can't just go replace the other, you can't go get another piece of that diamond and do that. So you can turn in the one that you still own and then get replacements for both so you can still have that matching set. Again, this isn't necessary for everyone, but can become important depending on your client's needs and wants, and really a nice bell to have if they are someone that quality and keeping sets together is an important topic. So kids' toys, really the whole reason of giving is to see your kids smile and make them happy. But unfortunately, there are a lot of instances that arise due to toys. 4,000 kids under the age of 18 go to the hospital each year following Christmas. And when we talk about toys, there's so many considerations, whether that's the wheels and motorcycles of the world. We talked about the limitations that are in the homeowners policy for things like those electric bikes, maybe even four-wheelers if they're taken off premise. So while your kids ride them in your driveway, they're safe, but now they're going to ride them down the street as you guys go for a walk and they run into someone, there might be limitations on that liability extending off premise. Then we have the outdoor fun, so things like trampolines and zip lines. While again, this brings a big smile to children's face, they are seen as nuisances from the insurance carrier. So there might be limitations in the policies due to this. There might be requirements that the clients have to comply with in order for coverage to respond. Trampolines are a perfect example. A lot of carriers now require nets and or grounding, which are like hooks that go around the bases to keep it from flipping over. So just making sure that as we bring in these new exciting toys to the household, we understand what complications that could cause on the insurance side. Small pieces, this is really just going to be a choking hazard. So not only for household residents, but as guests come over to play for the holiday season, share toys. This can be action figures, Barbie pieces. Children of young ages put lots of things in their mouth. I have a 3 and a 4-year-old, so I unfortunately know this all too well, but it's terrifying, especially when other kids come over and you just don't know how capable or understanding they are of small pieces. flying, again, this is going to be your drones and your kites. And while kites seem very innocent, they can poke eyes out. They can, again, cause minor damage. Where drones, they actually have some privacy issues. What happens when the kids flying the drone in the neighbor's backyard? They forgot to shut their blinds, and now they feel like there's an invasion of privacy because they see your kid's toy flying around. Those situations happen. There are crabby neighbors out there, and if something more major arises, there could be, again, some repercussions for those toys in household. Technology, this again is going to be that cyber hygiene. So maybe your kids have never had access to technology, and now your clients are gifting the iPhones or the iPads or the tablets. They should probably consider a separate Wi-Fi for those kids' toys, because we don't want mom and dad doing the same banking on the same Wi-Fi as kids are downloading Candy Crush and these games that actually invite a lot of viruses into the household. And then lastly are firearms. So this could be the BB guns, the Nerf guns. Again, they're fun, but they not only can cause bodily damage, but they can also cause some property damage. And these are some stats that I was able to pull. Um, this is just a list of the toys sending children to the hospital. So unpowered scooters has a landslide. Again, it seems like a safe, easy, fun toy. You want your kids or your nieces and nephews or your friends' kids to learn balance and be outside. There's a lot of danger that can come with that, especially if you or your clients are the fun house and you like to have people come over, and now you have guests that get to ride these scooters. You can see how much that increases their liability. Games, there's a whole host of things, but just to kind of give that variety. And not only are there toys, but what body parts do they injure? And as you can see, the face is one of the major ones. And that is where we see lifestyle changes. What happens if a kid has deformation in their face due to an accident that occurred at your house, and those parents sue you for lifestyle changes for the rest of that child's life? Those add up quickly. So again, understanding what toys you're gifting your kids, your friends' kids, whatever, and what repercussions they could potentially have. And then again, the wrist foot, these are minor. This is where medical payments becomes important. Maybe someone just has a twisted wrist, or maybe they just break their foot on the scooter. Medical payments can help. But as we get into these faces, this is where personal liability, this is where umbrella coverage really becomes necessary in your client's protection. And so, what coverage considerations should there even be for toys? There should be a lot, but like I mentioned, things like BB guns and other household toys bring in a lot of unwanted liabilities, and making sure the homeowners has the proper coverage is really where you're going to find that peace of mind. So, one is third party injuries. This is again can be mitigated through offering helmets to the children that are riding these toys. When it comes to Nerf guns, we see a bunch of, again, damage due to the eyes. So helping kids understand how to properly use these items. Trampolines, again, they're a lot of fun, but kids tend to do tricks on them. Now the neighborhood kids want to come over to the home. So if your clients at one point had 300,000 liability and now they add a trampoline to the home, maybe they should up their liability to 500,000 and potentially add an umbrella. It's going to cost them maybe $150, $200 a year, but will allow them to graciously invite the neighborhood down to have fun and not have to be Mr. Scrooge on the front porch chasing everybody else off so only their kids can enjoy the new trampoline, unless they want to. Then we have damage to personal property. So again, this is where those drones could come into play, maybe remote control vehicles, and just damage to the furniture. This is why things like an HO3 homeowners policy and an HO5 homeowners policy can make a big difference in coverage. An example would be your kid gets a new cool drone, they're flying it through the house, and they unfortunately crash into the old clock that you've had since your great grandmother gave it to you. Now that clock is damaged and you want to know, can we file a claim? An HO3 may not provide coverage for you because a drone flying into the cabinet is not one of these 16 covered perils for personal property. However, an HO5 policy would, because a drone flying into the clock is not an excluded coverage. So again, policy forms is something our tool can help you guys understand, but really can make a big difference in if there's coverage or not coverage, even when kids are using things like toys. And then again, we talk about just damage to the home. These are going to be for those larger items, maybe snowmobiles, ATVs, if or even a BB gun. Maybe a client has that atrium window that's a couple $1,000s, and their kids are outside having fun and they accidentally shoot out that window in their home or a neighbor's home. Those damages can add up quickly. So just understanding again how that all could come into play if there's the right coverages in place, and really what deductible applies for that home damage can help clients be prepared in those types of situations. So now we have a claim game. So I am going to try this for the first time and see if we can do some polls here. So, okay, let's see. Can you guys see the poll? I don't think so.
Yes, I can see the poll.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
it popped up.
So the first one is, do we think this claim's covered, which is roasting chestnuts in the kitchen. So while roasting chestnuts in the kitchen, unfortunately, a fire took place, and we want to know if the homeowner's policy is going to provide coverage. Give you guys like 5 more seconds. Oh, got a few more. Perfect. And the answer is yes. So this would be covered, as the homeowner's policies do cover fire damage arising from cooking. So good news is, if you do decide to roast chestnuts on your open fire in your kitchen, or specifically your stove, there would be coverage on the homeowners. So the outdoor lighting display catches fire. Do we think that would be covered or not? And the answer is yes. So we do, or homeowners does cover fire even on the outside of your home. So we've seen in hotter states where maybe there's new mulch put down. Unfortunately, people have the Christmas lights on and maybe they forgot to turn them off and they've been on for a few days, and now that mulch got really hot, started a fire. There would be a coverage in those situations. Or maybe there's just an electrical shortage that causes the fire. So the Grinch strikes and he breaks into the car and steals the gifts during the holiday parties as you're in between households. Do we think the Grinch stealing the gifts is covered? Yes. However, there's going to be 2 deductibles that apply. So typically within this situation, if the thief breaks the window to get into the car, maybe they damage the door handle, that will be covered under your auto policy. So your auto deductible would apply. But then the personal property within the car, so the new presents that you got, that would be considered personal property and would actually have to be covered on the homeowners. And so there would then be a second claim where your homeowner's deductible would respond. So yes, there could be coverage. It would usually be 2 claims. There are a handful of companies that offer like $500 to $1,000 in personal property coverage on their policy. So if you are one of those individuals, not only during the holiday season, but maybe you're a golfer and you keep your golf clubs in your car, or your clients have multiple jobs and they keep equipment in the car, understanding how those claims play out is really important and can add a lot of value. Even just in being prepared and knowing, hey, I'll have to pay 2 deductibles, or I have a good auto company and they're actually just going to cover it out of that auto policy. So next is diamond earrings gone missing. Do we think that is covered? Maybe. So that is maybe because, one, depending on the value, we're going to want to make sure it doesn't fall within the limitations of the homeowner's policy. 2, depending on what the client's wants are at time of that claim. The picture here was a set of earrings with the necklace. So maybe they just lost these earrings, but they can't find stones to match the necklace. So they want to turn it all in like that matching description I gave. With the right coverage, they would have the option to replace it, the whole set. And then lastly, those darn kids put their new cars down the toilet. And it wasn't until the party was going on, really, you're all cleaning up, that you get a foul odor in the basement. Do we think there is coverage or not? And the answer is no, unless there's water sewer backup. So again, this is something our system can point out for you and your clients to quickly know if this coverage is available. Water backups occur every day of the week, every day of the year. So it is an important coverage, especially for those clients that have finished basements. Back in, I think it was like 2018, 19, the average water backup claim was $51,000 for a finished basement. So they can add significant impact to clients' financial planning. And again, they can occur due to kids putting things down the toilet, putting too much grease down the drain, too many just lots of different reasons. So again, making sure clients have water backup is important. And then what are some key takeaways from today's webinar? One is make sure that your clients have up-to-date replacement costs. Again, use our replacement cost calculator in our system. It's a great way to just do a check-in. A lot of times your clients haven't even gone through that with an insurance professional because it was one of those black box items in the insurance world that nobody really knew existed. You now have the ability to get to that tool and help your clients understand it better. You can understand the type of homeowner's policy they're on, so that name peril versus open peril for their personal property and whether that red wine on the spilled oriental rug would be covered or not. And then liability. I love liability because it's the biggest unknown protection that we can provide. You don't know, again, what kind of toy is going to be gifted to your clients, what kind of friends they're going to have over. And if something occurs, the damage that can fall within liability coverages can be anywhere from the medical bills, the lost wages, the change in lifestyle, that guest experience. So again, I think at the very minimum, making sure your clients have the right liability protection in place is key. When we talk about valuables, again, there's not just for the gifter, but the one receiving the gifts and how to properly update coverage, provide documentation, and those sorts of things. Consider coverages while traveling. So a lot of times people don't consider their valuables while they travel. They just know they're going to bring them along, but not any kind of repercussions per se of doing that. So just helping them understand that, again, there's an increase in theft during the holidays. You don't want to draw attention to yourselves. Those all can be very easy ways to avoid claims and allow clients to keep those valuable items as long as possible. When it comes to cars, again, those gifts in the cars and understanding how coverage may or may not apply, understanding when driving long distances, the increase in liability that may occur due to multi-car accidents. Sometimes, depending on the state your clients are driving in, there could be hazardous road conditions, and then renting vehicles. Renting vehicles is a lot more complicated than ones think, especially with adult children in household, and understanding if there is value in buying the rental cars company and or allowing your auto insurance just to extend. For our North Carolina folks in the room, you do actually have to have an additional selection on your auto policy to extend full coverage to rental cars. So we don't point that out in our system right now, but I do recommend anyone in North Carolina, if you or your clients will be renting vehicles, make sure your liability does include full coverage for rental vehicles. And then the liability. So again, excess liability, making sure there's appropriate limits based on lifestyle needs and assets. And then worldwide coverage is in place, especially for your clients that travel outside the US. And then just some, again, mitigation tips because who really has time for a claim? One is just going to be security. So whether that's having a home alarm, maybe you have the door ring bell so you can see who's coming to your door. If you're going to be traveling, making sure maybe a neighbor comes and checks on the home and picks up packages or mail so it doesn't look like you're away, even if it's just picking up the newspaper and putting it inside. They can also do a quick walkthrough to make sure no pipes have burst so there's no water damage that we have seen go on for 2 or 3 days while people travel over the holidays and cause significant damage. Again, we can't forget about our pets and children. So one thing I learned is poinsettias are actually poisonous pets. So making sure that what you're decorating with is not only safe for children, but also for your animals. Water your Christmas trees. Don't keep your Christmas or holiday lights on all day, all night. The amount of people that do that was staggering. And it, again, just increases that likelihood of fire, which can cause significant damage that nobody has time to deal with. And then lastly, when hosting, it's always good to consider a special events policy. They're affordable, they're a great way to add additional protection and bring that peace of mind so you and your clients can be the hostess with the mostest without worrying about limitations within their homeowner's policy. So before I jump in, just to show some people the tool, did we have any additional questions? Let's see.
Currently no questions just yet, but
Fabulous.
maybe some will pop up towards the end.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, and so a few things that I'm just going to quickly highlight on our tool. So the first thing I wanted to show is this policy form. So you'll notice here, this is where we will help you indicate whether that personal property is open perils or named perils. And not only do we list it here, we then do give some insights about what that really means for you to help your clients have a better understanding. We also talk about the replacement cost. So as you'll see here, if this client had a fire today, there could be a $140,000 difference between what my homeowner's policy is covering and what the true replacement cost is of my home. And the way I get to that is I just go to the awesome home icon. This one already has it in here. So I'm just going to hit refine estimate. I would put in the address, but then I can go in here. The home's 2 stories, 3,800 square feet. I can hit refine. And this is where a lot of insurance people just assume everything's basic or builder's grade, which means Home Depot countertops, laminate cabinet or laminate countertops, Home Depot cabinetry. But you've been in those kitchens. You've sat there with your clients to go through this. You may know they actually have quartz countertop, or they spent a lot of time to work with a designer to get those high-end cabinets. And you now can select and figure out what is truly, the builder's grade or the grade of the client's home. You can also select basement and attach cars, and you just hit this recalculate. And now it's going to adjust here. I'm going to close and accept. You'll notice it adjust here. I'm going to hit save. And now we'll see that gap actually become larger. And again, we're going to call it out here that it's actually insured at only 70% the value. So not only could I be out of pocket, but there's also some co-insurance issues. So again, just a great way to quickly check. And you as the advisors, do not need to be the experts in this. If an insurance professional saw this note or just this gap, they're quickly going to know how to solve this for you and your client. So again, your job is to help educate your clients, bring to their attention these potential issues, but not always solve them, and help them get to the right insurance individual to do that. The other thing I'll show very quickly is just the auto liability limit. So again, just making sure they have the right coverages in place, deductible. So when they're renting a car, if I rented a car, I would have $1,000 deductible applied to any damage to that vehicle. So again, whether that's the windshield being cracked because I'm going to Colorado to visit my sister and we're going to go in the mountains and there's just rocks that fly everywhere on those roads, I will be responsible for that windshield to be replaced. That's not going to go on my insurance. Again, some of the rental car coverages that you can buy waive this deductible, and that's where it might be worth investing in the rental car coverage versus relying on your client's own auto to protect. We will also make note about the different rental listed drivers. So again, that example I gave on, are they really listed? Does coverage extend to them? And then lastly is just this umbrella policy. So we'll show you guys how much liability they have in place, maybe check their limits if their net worth is more than what this umbrella is. And a great way to help call this out properly is to go to this icon here, the umbrella icon, and you're going to put in their estimated at-risk value, which is their net worth potentially. So we'll just say here, so we can get the right trigger, that my net worth is 2 million. And I hit save. And now you'll notice on the umbrella portion that my limits are now red. And this is something that I should probably talk to an insurance professional about And we even give you a great little note here that just adds in some considerations because net worth does not always equal the risk assets because of how you all help them structure it and trust LLCs and whatnot. But again, just a good way to start the conversation so the insurance professional can guide them from there. But we're right at time, so I will stop if there's no questions, and we appreciate everyone for joining today.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everybody, for attending. With that, we'll see you next time.